So thanks, Nevin. Great intro. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today. It's obviously great to do this talk and be looking at people while doing so. So that's fantastic. So again, as Nevin said, this is my journey today. It was a lot of fun and very interesting and almost very humbling to start putting this deck together because I haven't really thought about it. It's been 2 years of just hard grind as of late, and putting all these slides together, looking back on all the memories that I've had was like a lot of laughs and a lot of stressful times. So I'm really excited to share these details, kind of gloves off, super raw. And I'm really looking forward to the questions at the end. So let's get started. So who am I? Nevin did an intro, but I think it's also important to note, my wife's here. I am a husband, got married last year. So, woo. Right? I'm a dog dad, right? My 2 dogs here, Dottie and Winnie, I love them very much. They're very noisy, but they're the best. I'm a son. My parents are also here, John and Giselle. They're sitting right up there. So very supportive, and they're supporting me here again tonight. And then lastly, I kind of put this in this order, is this entrepreneur, because I need to remind myself as I was putting the slide together, it was all in nice one row, and then I indented them, and I said, I got to remember this order because it's not always about business. It's not always about entrepreneurship. It's about balance, right? So I need to remind myself of that, and I'm doing so tonight. So I'm going to start this talk off talking about the early years. I think that a lot of the formative moments that I was looking back on while putting this presentation together really shaped who I am. So I think it's really important to kind of look back in time, look at those moments, and really think about, reflect upon the moments I think shaped me as a person who I am today. Key points I touch on: family. As I mentioned, my parents are here tonight, supporting me like they always have. I have a younger brother, Joe. He's an electrician in Algoma. Very proud of him, what he's accomplished in his life. And we had a very modest upbringing. I mean, all day long, we didn't have a whole lot, but our family really, we made it work. Sports were paramount. They were huge in my life. I played every sport I could possibly think of. I tried everything, even basketball. As we know, it didn't really work out from a vertical perspective. But I learned the importance of hard work, teamwork, dedication, everything that comes along with sports. I formed many, many lifelong relationships with joining these teams and playing sports. And then I played a high level of hockey and soccer for many, many years, which took up a lot of time and like I said, dedication to the sport. Education, I'll touch on this, but my relationship with education is checkered. I did end up dropping out of school, which I will touch on all these later on in the presentation, but I was a pretty good student up until grade 7, right? I don't think I was ever, not intelligent, didn't really grasp the material, but I didn't try. I mean, plain and simple, I was just a textbook underachiever, and I could have afforded to try a little bit harder. And then lastly, I'll touch on work. I had normal jobs. Each one kind of formed a little bit about who I became. So I'm going to touch on each of those items. Job number 1, paper route. Just like most people. Very, very simple. It was a way to earn some money, but I think it's really important to talk about that point that I put on here. I was playing hockey and soccer. I had a paper route, yet the papers got delivered every Saturday. Thanks, Mom. So I thought that's pretty funny and a good laugh I had while putting that one together. The first actual job I had was the Fazio Memorials, and my father set me up with that through his friend. I was a tombstone installer in high school. What a weird job, right? So I had to explain that to people that I was going in grade 10, grade 11, hopping on the school bus to go to this job where I was installing tombstones and cleaning them in the cemetery. But this opportunity taught me hard work in the sense that I would like dirty work, right? It wasn't really the computer stuff that I ended up doing a little bit later on, but it taught me to use my hands, and it taught me to do something a little bit different. Later on, I'd have a summer internship with OLG. So this is my first IT job where I was actually dealing with computers, doing password resets, and it was my first sort of foray into that corporate world. So I learned a lot about IT, I learned a lot about corporate structure, I learned a lot about procedure. Really great opportunity I'm very thankful for. And lastly, first dose of reality. I did get fired from my job at the credit union, okay? And then this is when I started to realize, oh shit, this is it. Nope, not them. They're still good, all right. I did get let go from the credit union. So it was my first real dose of reality that people are not gonna continue babying you through life. You gotta man up, you gotta own up to your mistakes. And if you make enough mistakes, you're gonna get fired, right? So this was again, first dose of real reality. I treasure this experience so much because it was time to get real. Family and sports, I touched on this. I learned a lot about hard work from my parents because they had to work very hard, like everything that they had. They absolutely had to work very hard. They encouraged me at a very young age to learn to read, and mathematics was a big thing, which really started to play into my future career. Getting a degree was paramount. Oops. Right? Didn't really work out that way, but it was always ingrained in us that you have to get an education. You have to actually, further yourself in life to get a job. The hockey thing was really interesting. So anybody who's played hockey understands hockey. Your kids are going through the system, whatever it is. 12, 13, and 14 are like really interesting formative years when it comes to hockey. Because you're starting to look at OHL draft. You're starting to look at what scholarship might look like at like 12. It's crazy, right? When you think about it, you look back at it. And I wasn't that good. I was like a third, fourth line. I was good enough to make the team. So it was really, really difficult because, I got picked on. When you're not that good, kids are mean, kids are tough. But, again, I learned a lot from this experience. I don't regret it at all. So I'm going to look back on it in just a moment. High school came around. I joined football. Had no idea what it was all about. Ended up being pretty good at it. I guess the sports I played leading up to that lended itself to me being a pretty decent football player. So I learned a lot from that experience as well. And then lastly, this one quote I seriously carry with this with me to this day. Comes from Marty Smith, the football coach at the time. He says, act like you've been there before, act like you're going to be there again. And what he meant was, act with modesty, act with humility. Don't be a fool when you reach the end zone. Have class. And I seriously think about that all the time. Even today, in my meetings with others and in my work life, I take this lesson with me. So, one-to-one, you can see hard work, learn this from my parents. Resilience, learn this. I didn't quit hockey. It sucked. It was so hard. It wasn't really panning out. Kept with it. Confidence, that's what football taught me, right? I said, okay, if I believe in myself, I work at this, I can achieve something. And then lastly, that modesty piece. It was, you can be really good at something, you can be very confident, but you can still be modest about it. So, at this point, things are going pretty good. I won a trophy, Walter Lowe Athlete of the Year, leaving high school, got recruited to go play for the Ottawa GGs for football. I was moving along. I was putting all my eggs in this basket pretty much. 2 ACLs. That's what I went through. So both of my knees torn, football is over, dreams are shattered, and I became that statistic. That statistic, that speech that everybody keeps saying, get your education because sports don't last forever. Should have listened, right? So there I am, the dream's over. I'll get more on this information later. But it was a little bit of a crushing blow to everything. My ego, everything that was culminating to that point was pretty much over. Turned out okay. All right. So you heard the early years stuff. You heard a lot of the formative moments that I've been reflecting on, really thinking about this. Now let's get into the actual Kavera story because this is, a big part of the story. It all started with this grade 8 presentation. Okay, this slide is ridiculous. I get it. It's got skeletons doing the worm. It's got this crazy banner on here. But honestly, it started with this grade 8 presentation, or this grade 8 assignment that our teacher gave us. She said, you can build a website, anything you want on Yahoo GeoCities. It's going to be your own little thing. Go. So I built my website in grade 8 about Dodge Vipers, but I had skeletons doing the worm. It's actually this GIF. I went and found it. And then I had MIDI files playing in the background. If you don't know what MIDI files are, they were these audio files, super small in size, that were made up of computer beeps and tones, and people would make popular songs out of them. So my website had these guys doing the worm, pictures of cars, and then Thunderstruck in beeps and tones playing. It was a cool place to be. But I fell in love. I fell in love with this idea that anybody can access this with an internet connection. They can find my little place on the web. They can see what I built, I created from anywhere. I was totally enthralled with this concept. I came into possession of this book. This was my very first website development book where I actually learned the coding behind the scenes of websites. So that website about Vipers went through a few iterations, and then I finally kind of let it go. Like as summer of grade 9, grade 10, I was no longer interested in maintaining it. But the funny thing is, I found it. That URL still works. It's terrible. And like Angel Fire just has it totally riddled with ads, and it's just a complete mess, but it still works. When I first started making money, it was fixing computers. Big surprise. Got my first computer at 13 years old, going into the summer of grade 9. I know my parents would probably recognize this story. I remember it vividly. We bought it from the Web on Great Northern Road. It was a tower about this big, a 19-inch monitor that I could barely lift, and I loved it. I was in heaven. I spent so many hours on that thing, taking it apart and learning new things and diving into the operating system. So it taught me to understand how the hardware and software would interface. So I learned a lot about it, learned about managing it, learned about upkeep, which I obviously have taken into my career. And I learned that, Kazaa, Morpheus, Napster, you guys remember this peer-to-peer file sharing? The devil, absolutely the devil, the bubonic plague of computers. Once this got in, the viruses never stopped. So it kept me busy. So I picked up a lot of $20 cleanup jobs from aunts and uncles. So yeah, it was great. I learned a lot. My parents would drop me off. I'd spend hours fixing it for $20. They'd pick me up before supper. And then I realized it's not a career for me. It wasn't glorious. After a while, I got really old. Fast forward a little bit further. Now I'm starting to get into the paid projects, and I definitely put it in quotes because number one was this Sioux Civics. I was playing soccer at the time, as I told you, and for the traveling team, I put together a website. Had bios, photos of the team, little games on it, sponsors were all on there. Super cool little website. Everybody loved it. We had a lot of fun with it. So I built that for the team. It was my first kind of like public-facing website where I could show some of my skills. The next one was the Fazio Memorials. I approached Phil at the time and I said, yeah, but you're going to pay me this time, $150. I did well on that one. This was built entirely in Flash. And I know some people in the audience know what that is. It's since been defunct. But I built the whole thing in Flash. It had little tombstones and granite countertops flying from left to right. It was ridiculous, but it was online. I bought a domain name, everything else. It was my first paid contract. I was pumped. I didn't know there was money to be made in this stuff. I didn't know at all. I mean, I was just having fun out there. So I charged $150 for a full website that took me a week to build. But I didn't care. I was having fun. Now I'm packing up. High school's over. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to university because there's some formative moments coming up here. As I mentioned, football. I did get recruited to go play for the Ottawa GGs. I played summer ball leading up to the first year of university, and I tore that ACL, that one I was talking about. So that was the first one. So before I even got there, didn't know it was torn, and I get there, they do an MRI, it's torn, and I basically just do film and everything else for the whole first year. So again, the reason why this is important is because I'm putting my eggs in this basket foolishly. But I think football is going to become something. So after the first year goes by, I do my thing in Ottawa. I come home for the summer like everybody else does. And here's Kevin's shout out. I know I reached out to you on MSN Messenger at like 2 a.m. one night and said, let's start a business. I am like convinced of it. So there's us shaking hands in these obviously staged photos. Our first logo, Incision Studios, we started a website company. And here's where two of our first clients were right here, Godfrey Realty and Sims Countertops. And again, huge local shout out to these two companies. They trusted these young punks to build them websites, which we pulled off, we did. And they're still clients today. They're still Cavera clients today, which is super, super cool. Yeah. But at this moment, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. The fire was burning hot. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like most partnerships, sometimes they end, right? So obviously we're still very good friends. He's sitting in the audience right now laughing at me, but that's great. Here was our buyout offer. Swear to God, I got the business. Kevin got half the cash in the bank account, was about $1,000 at the time. He got the camera and then about a case of beer, but we had to split, right? There was the first buyout acquisition. It was huge. Coming from that, Cavera was born. So there's so many stories, so many details about this whole process, but I'm going to kind of skip to the few startup stage highlights that I think were extremely important. Again, I dropped out of school. This was a huge key point because I was getting busy enough and I was so passionate about what I was doing. I felt that I wasn't getting good grades. What am I doing? What if I just put all my eggs in this basket? As you can see, I jump in with both feet, football, business. Yeah. So I did it again. Right away when Kevin and I split and I started up Cavera, I immediately signed up for the summer company and then thereafter did the starter company program as well. So these were funding programs that you guys can inquire about as well. But essentially what I learned was there's an opportunity to receive a little bit of funding for startup costs, buy a laptop, if colleagues of mine buy a lawnmower, whatever it is. but it was really great networking. So we learned a lot. We learned a lot from each other. There was a lot of mentorship opportunities there. And then a great stepping stone for me was I understood that I was getting referrals from them, right? Sault Ste. Marie EDC, Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center, they are helping other businesses. And what do? Build website for businesses. So we were getting referrals from them, at least opportunities to talk to these businesses, which turned out to be a very pivotal moment for us. I volunteered a lot, Strive. I was a board member for a while. We donated our very first website, the very first Strive website, I should say, which had online registration. I think the chamber at the time didn't really have it yet. So volunteered, Relay for Life, put teams in, Special Olympics, so on and so forth. So I was building my network while doing good in the community, which again, ended up being kind of paramount in later success. I agreed to every speaking opportunity like this one. It was an opportunity to get out, work on public speaking, meet new people, kind of share some knowledge, and then ultimately it turned into some business. If I was doing a seminar on Google Ads or I was doing a seminar on social media, people would always have follow-up questions and I would meet with them afterwards. So it's win-win, guys. Like this is, if you're starting a business, you're in a business, you're trying to figure out how to grow things. I mean, look at these key learnings. Volunteer. You've got time. You may not have money yet, but you've got time. Build your network because you just need people in your life that are actually going to work with you. You got to have good people around you, not just support systems, but other people who want to refer business to you. You need it. Try speaking events. Public speaking is so paramount. I mean, I'm still not great at it. I'm not. But being able to stand up in front of a crowd of people and deliver your message with conviction is so important in life. It'll come out in so many walks of life, so I really encourage it. And the last one, survive. I got more stories about this one, but early years as a business, you're getting started in anything, you just got to figure out how to survive. Okay, story number 1. Call us the Village Media side quest. So starting out with Cavera, I lived at the time in this 9 Queen Street East apartment where Union Jack kind of started up eventually, but it was under construction at the time. I lived there with my then girlfriend. I had a couple of sublets I was subletting to just to kind of make ends meet because I had no money, I had nothing, except Cavera and a Queen Street address. Yeah, I mean, if people Google mapped it, it didn't look so great, as you can see, but I was on Queen Street, so I used that to my advantage. At the time, I hired a junior designer. So I was in this really weird, awkward space where I couldn't really afford to pay 2 minimum wage jobs, but I could afford to pay 1. So I hired a junior designer because I couldn't design to save my life. So listen to this story. She would come to this apartment, come up the stairs, go into that office and work. I would leave the apartment 3 days a week, go work for Village Media, building in little widgets and trinkets on StuToday.com. And then I'd come home and build websites in the evenings and on the weekends. So that's what I did. That was like the start of Cavera. It's crazy to think about that and reflect on that. Cool thing, side note in bold there, Village Media, the brand, super inspirational moment. That was born while I was on this little subcontract, right? I know Kevin's shaking his head there. He remembers this. I remember actually having talks in the office, Nevin, about StartUP too. 642 Queen. A lot happened in that office, but this is a super inspirational moment in my life looking back at it. Like, I was there. All right, so we're skipping around to the next story. Again, key moments, guys, so lots of questions at the end, make sure. So Cavera's getting busier, we're getting busier, we're starting to figure out that we're actually a business, we've got a shot at this. I've got a little bit of a cycle of staff because I'm trying to figure out how to pay people and keep the flow of money, cash flow, right? Just didn't have it. We're a project-based business. That's what the big thing is here. Ebbs and flows of project-based businesses are so difficult. So I hadn't really figured out recurring revenue yet. We were just going website to website to website. So I'd get out there, I'd network, I'd do a speaking event, I'd sign a website. I'd disappear for a month building that website. Then I'd get back out there because I had no pipeline and I'd repeat that process and it sucked. I had no money, there was no savings, there was no way to invest in basically anything. So it was just getting by, right? The Joe story, he was speaking at the Millworks and I had in my crosshairs Quattro Hotel. Super cool brand, that sleek black, the purple, I really wanted to work with them. So I went to his talk, I pulled him aside after the talk and I said, Joel, great talk, really appreciate you. I want Quattro Hotel. And he said, okay, I'm gonna set you up with Mike, the general manager. You guys are gonna have a meeting together. If you can impress him, we'll do work together. And Mike is crazy. He is a tough cookie to impress. But I prepared for weeks. I went in there. I said, I want to build you a new website. I want to shift your strategy over to Google Ads, capture some of that bottom of funnel traffic, move it away from travel agencies who charge 30, 40%. And I'm going to show you the cost difference. He was sold. That was it. Quattro, again, still a client today. Because of that, Mike said, do a presentation for the owners. You need to tell the owners what you're doing here. I think it's fantastic. They need to understand where their money is going. Do a pitch, do a presentation. So I did. Joe, Dave, Fausto Di Tommaso, John Martella. I'm in front of these guys. And if you know these guys, they know nothing about digital. They will tell you that. So it was a really, really tough conversation. I think there was a little bit of, eyes rolling back of the head. But Joe listened. Joe, I had his full attention. We went for lunch after that. He said he wants to buy an IT company to expand his accounting practice. And I pitched the idea about digital marketing right then and there at lunch. A couple months later, he bought in. Okay, so all of a sudden, I go from being like project to project, somehow getting Joe to get a meeting with Mike at Quattro, getting their business, and then turning that into an investment deal. And I look back on that and I go, geez, talk about these little micro moments that add up to something, right? So you never know. You just never know. Finally, I had a little bit of breathing room. I had cash in the bank account. I could actually breathe for a second, not worried about where payroll was going to come from. So we invested in the office. We got a new office, 875 Queen Street. Paint job. The first thing we did was paint when we moved in, got all that stuff going. I did more speaking events, more seminars. I got out there. I hired more people. And then suddenly we figured out, okay, we've got a business here. Okay, we've jumped to that next level of sustainability at our current level. And we were moving. It was great. I actually figured something out. So there was this program. Many people here probably know what it is, the BEAM program. And the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center put this program on. It was essentially a large pot of money, and small businesses could apply to receive $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 of that money for digital transformation, essentially. They can invest, hire a vendor like Tavera to do e-commerce integration, to do a social media strategy, you name it. It had to be some sort of digital transformation. We got a lot of these projects. We did. We got a lot of these projects. New competitors sprouted up overnight because all of a sudden there was grant money available and people weren't afraid to spend it. So Bill Boterney comes in, founder of Stuff Lubricants. If you don't already know industrial biolubricant, I can go into more detail later if you want to know what it is. WD-40 competitor comes to our office, has no online presence whatsoever, chooses us as the vendor, and says, I need e-commerce. So we build them a full e-commerce website. Blood, sweat, and tears go into it. It's beautiful. It's actually still the same website that's live today. Aerosols can't ship by air. Shipping costs were just as expensive as the case of industrial biolubricant. Sales, there were no sales. It was awful. So we built this beautiful website. We thought this was going to be the savior of the business. It wasn't working out. Bill was great. I mean, he didn't blame us. It wasn't our fault. We could have never predicted the logistics behind this was going to be so costly. So he comes back into my office one day and he goes, I want to do Dragon's Den. I said, good luck. I wanted nothing to do with it at first because I knew how the show goes. If you don't have your stuff buttoned up, you get embarrassed on live TV. After a little bit of talking, he convinced me to do it, but I said I wanted to control the pitch. I wanted to have, like I said, full control of the pitch. I wanted to write everything, and I want 10% of the business because if this does actually go somewhere, then at least I have something on the other end of it. So if you watch the show, it's great. I'm going to kind of run through this real quick, but we go to Toronto multiple times. We go to filming. We're in there for an hour, do our pitch, get yelled at by Manjeet. That's why she's on here. Screamed at. It was wild. It was at that point that I realized this was just TV and really kind of settled into the pitch. And then by the end of it, we went in 50K, 20% what we wanted. Gym for living, 50K, 50%. I still haven't heard the end of that. Are you crazy? That's why I put that. But it was just TV, right? So we shook hands, made the deal, made it on TV, and we had nothing but time to prepare for that. So I learned a lot about dealing with investment companies at that point because they want everything to be completely buttoned up. They want you to do all the work. The due diligence process was very lengthy, 5 months long to be precise. A lot of communication with Jim's people, as he calls them. And finally, we get to the end of it. They said, yes, we're going to give you the deal. But by this time, the episode had aired and sales skyrocketed. It just took off. So we're like, well, this is no longer the deal we need. Now it's time to go mainstream. We got to go big. We need like $250,000. And it didn't materialize, didn't work out. So we said no, so on and so forth. I can get into more detail later. But this was honestly, again, super formative experience because of what I had to go through dealing with the private equity folks, right? Jim's people, the investment firm, and being able to do something like I knew nothing about industrial lubricants. I own a computer business. I don't work with my hands very much, right? I don't even know much about the target audience of this business, but being able to put all those pieces together and deliver that pitch to those folks in Toronto and have them say, yeah, looks good. So again, learned a lot about business in that scenario. So that led to the 2017 Northern Ontario Business Award for Young Entrepreneur. It was kind of on the heels of Kavera starting to take off, Stuff Lubricants. We just went to air, so things were going really well. It was great. Obviously, it's cool, feels good to win awards. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead. Elephant in the room, it's cool, right? What I realized after that, probably about a year later, was the exposure we got from it. We got awesome backlinks back to our website. We got articles everywhere, social media posts, everything else. And I said, this is great exposure. That's what this is. And again, like the volunteering, building your network, it's free. So we did it again. I mean, why not? It's free. I can't recall who kind of put in the whole nomination and everything else. I think it was internal. But my point of the story is don't be afraid to do this. Okay, if awards are accepting self-nominations, think about it as advertising. Why not? Right? If you've got a lot of stuff that you need to talk about and you need to brag about and you've done well, do it. Why not? It's nothing but upside potential. So I really encourage it. Okay, COVID. There it is. COVID hit, the world changed, everything stopped except e-commerce. It went the complete opposite direction. So there was a real interesting opportunity here. I had staff at the time, sent everybody home. I hired a couple people remotely. They were working out of Thunder Bay at the time. And I basically approached everyone and I said, like, Shopify's on the up and up here. There's a lot of business coming through. Do we jump on this? Because I actually saw the writing on the wall with this. Not COVID, no one did, but like Shopify. I actually knew this was gonna be chaos. If we say yes to this, if we open the floodgates to this, get ready because like our lives are given up. Like we're gonna have to work our butts off nonstop to make this work. At first, everybody said, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. I came up with rev share models that everybody got a piece. I thought everybody was happy. It didn't turn out that way. Burnout set in. You just can't keep operating at that pace for that many months without something falling apart. So it did. It started falling apart, and I thought for sure, like this was it. We're losing people. No one's showing up to work. Clients are pissed because we're not getting their projects done. Real tough time. Not only that, work from home. I'm now competing with like Google and Toronto firms, paying Toronto salaries, and they're hiring people in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm double screwed now. How am I ever going to compete with that doing Shopify websites for small business in Sault Ste. Marie? So again, thought it was done. As I mentioned before, we were getting pretty good at Shopify. So good, so we actually caught the eye of the Shopify Plus team. Shopify Plus is the premium version of Shopify, the one you can't really buy on the website. You got to reach out to their sales team and get qualified and all that kind of fun stuff. Starts at about $2,500 a month US just to get registered for it. But we caught their eye. We were doing some pretty cool things at the time. And then suddenly we get a phone call or an email. Illuminize. So this is a metal printing company, kind of like a Printful, if you will. They do like drop shipping, printing, but they did high-end print work. So it was only high-end metals, quality materials, and they had a facility in Brooklyn. They were about 8 months into a Shopify migration. Their developer just basically took off into like Costa Rica or something, who knows, left them dead in the water, and they were on the verge of missing Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which was a $2 million weekend for them. They were on the verge of missing that. They called us, gave us this insurmountable task. I pulled like 3 all-nighters in a row just to kind of get this thing out the door. Nick Sicoli is like pulling his hair out, launching ad campaigns, trying to help pull this out of the fire, and they did like $2.1 million. We did it. Like, it was unbelievable. To this day, it still kind of gives me shivers because like I had no sleep, I was like a different person, but we did it. So right then and there, They loved us. They gave us all their business. They said, you take all the media, take all the website support, take everything. Well, whatever you want. We loved you. What I didn't know is they were partly owned by private equity, which is that Win company. So Win Brands is what's called an e-commerce aggregator. They buy up successful businesses, successful e-commerce businesses, bring them into the fold, into their platform, and find ways to run them more efficiently. So right away, I got an intro to that CEO. He loved us, couldn't believe what we were doing, loved our story, loved the Sault Ste. Marie. Where the hell is that? I'll come visit you one day. I go, it's a little far. But he loved us. So now we're getting his referrals. He made one very key introduction, which is to the Modco Media, which we're about to get into, and that's Eric Docterman, the CEO. One of many introductions that Kyle made, the CEO of Win Brands, but this one was special. So now I've got both of these guys sending us referrals. It's different this time. It's US dollar. COVID, we all know, what was it, $1.40, $1.45? So now I had money again, right? I mean, we're years past the Joe investment at this point. We have to stand on our own 2 feet, but I've got money now because I'm converting US dollars. On top of that, the clients that we're getting, way higher price tolerance than we've ever dealt with. So now we're at a whole new tier, a whole new level of client that we're dealing with. So yeah, things are going good again, right? Despite the fact that we thought we were going to die at the last stage with losing staff and losing people to Google, all that fun stuff. So now we had a business. Not only was I selling websites, but we got completely away from the ebbs and flows, or just the ebbs and flows side of things, and self-defeating behaviors, which is what I put here. So now we were not only selling websites, we were selling development support retainers, social media retainers, Google advertising, you name it, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month US to manage the whole e-commerce platform for these clients. So things were finally starting to move, and I can actually afford to pay people what they deserved. It was like a whole new revelation. So the first thing I did, I cleaned house. Not people, as you can see here, specific tasks. So we got rid of the whole concept of being everything to everyone, okay? Print, well, we're not good at it. Why are we doing it? We can't compete. Gone. Branding and brand development, same thing, requires a whole separate skill set. We don't have it, stop offering it. Print design obviously goes hand in hand with the brand side of things. Any websites under $5,000, we just can't afford to do anymore because we're paying people better. We've got a group RSP plan, health benefits. Like, we're a real business now. We're grown-ups, right? So I can't afford to do websites for under $5,000 anymore at all. So we just kind of got rid of that. We set our tier, our floor of what we can offer, and that's that. Abusive clients and then spin-off types of businesses. I spent so much time trying to solve the Cavera revenue problem that it resulted in all these different like side hustles instead of focusing on Cavera. And this was such a revelation for me that it's a self-defeating behavior. Why not just focus on what you're good at, right? Yeah, Kevin keeps looking at me. He knows all the stories. So, like I said, at this moment, as you can see, survival mode off. Like, now I got a real business. Let's focus on it. So as I kind of alluded to, there was a very key introduction to the Modco Media team, Eric Docterman, CEO. So I want to talk a little bit about that and the current present day happenings. Modco, this is what it stands for, just in case you guys didn't know that. So at first when I said like Modco, like Modrobes, like those old pants, like I had no idea what to make of Modco. It was the weirdest thing in the world. And then it said, well, it stands for my own damn company. And I'm like, oh, you guys swear in meetings? That's cool. So we started doing more work together, specifically with these guys. And these are New Yorkers. If you have any experience dealing with New Yorkers, they're crazy people, plain and simple. They don't sleep, they drink tons of coffee, they just go hard all the time. They're the business capital of the world, like plain and simple. It's insane how insane they are. So we're doing more work with them. We're helping them with development work, consulting, analytics, data, you name it. And we've got all these new clients that we're working on, just kind of like being a part of. Fox News, a very interesting one. But we did a lot of work. Hilti Tools globally, super cool client to work on. Lendly, we're in the financial sector now, some really big businesses. Ocean Casino, we helped them launch their new app. We didn't build it, but we went through all the process. Ocean Casino is the largest casino in Atlantic City, right? So we've got some clients now that we're really excited to work on. And then this happened. So April 2024, not that long ago, Modco Media acquired Cavera, right? So I know there's been kind of some rumblings through the community. If you heard it, you heard it through the grapevine. There was no real official announcement because Cavera is still a full bona fide Canadian entity. It's just owned by the US firm. And these negotiations took 18 months because you think about it, you're this small little agency with like 8 people in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. You're really good at what you do, but you're still like this big compared to New York, the Big Apple. So it took 18 months of going back and forth and negotiating. And the first deal that was presented to me, or the first response, because I was the one who pitched them, the first response I got back was basically, felt like scrap or like tear it down for parts. It's kind of what it felt like, right? They're going to take my business, take what they want, scrap everything else. I'm like, whoa, hang on a second. We need to take care, at least do a transition plan for some of the clients, transition plan for the staff, everything else into new positions. And I want everything to stay as is. And then I said, I want you to acquire the business as a whole. Like there's no debt, there's nothing for you to worry about. Just take the whole business over and let's continue operating as a Canadian entity because there are advantages to it. Public sector work, government, municipalities. So after all that negotiation, we finally inked the deal. Now we're together. And, you know, as Holly knows, she's laughing over there. Holly works for Modco now, by the way. We're still going through the transition. It's a lot of work. As excited as I am looking back at it now, this has been by far, out of everything I talked about tonight, the hardest thing I've gone through. This past year has been insanity. I mean, we were definitely a tiny little minnow of a fish in a massive pond, and at any point we were ready to get eaten, I felt like, right? So I went through, like, I had to learn about navigating Canadian and US law when I was going through the acquisition. I had to learn so much. Again, I had a lawyer. I did not do all this stuff by myself, but there were teams of people. He's got his big kind of New York firm with 4 lawyers. I've got West Laverne and Provençal law, and we're figuring shit out. Like I had a lawyer at least, right? But we had to navigate this, and there was a lot of stress. I had to protect myself and others, the future. Like, what does this look like? So that meant negotiating kind of like keeping Cavera alive, keeping the Canadian entity, allowing us to continue to operate relatively autonomously, but still report up. Job for me, right? I mean, at first I thought I wasn't going to be without a job. I thought it was going to be a buyout. I'm going to go off and do something else. But then it turned into, well, I should probably hang around, make sure the transition goes okay, make sure my people okay, make sure that the clients are okay, so on and so forth. Again, endless negotiations. I know I put that back in there, but my God, it was just so much negotiating back and forth to try and make this deal happen. Imposter syndrome, very real thing. I mean, I owned a business in Sault Ste. Marie. I was starting to get a kind of a name for myself. Cool, people know who I am in Sault Ste. Marie. That's fantastic. Nobody knows who I am in New York, let alone when I'm joining these meetings with people. Like, you're from Canada? What do you know? Legit. Like that's what it was like, right? So you had to really, really prove yourself. So you're battling this imposter syndrome constantly, which I think I'm just starting to get over now. As such, because of all this stuff, the toll on my mental health, like I'm totally burned out by the time the deal gets inked to the point where I'm like smiling, but like twitching, you know, like I'm really, really happy. I finally got there. I reached my goal, but I'm like, what's left of me at this point? I got to try and pick up the pieces now because it's been so hard for the last little while, focused in on this task. So there was a toll. I got to admit it, like an absolute toll on mental and physical health. And for many, many months, even still, I find myself kind of wondering, it's less now. Did I make a horrible mistake, right? Like that sucked. I'm like, I spent 15 years building this thing. I sold it. I gave it away. I can't take it back. So I battled with that for quite a while. But kind of to recall some of those previous slides, I jump in with both feet, as we know, and I have no quit. I have no give up. So I had to make it work. So we're still here today, still working through that transition, and happy to report it's going a lot better. So why would I do it then? Like after that slide, why the hell would I do this, right? Even going into the deal, isolation and burnout was really coming back. It was really, really happening. As an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a sole owner, isolation is so very, very real. I mean, you are making all the decisions for your business. Very few people, except for other entrepreneurs who are going through exactly what you're going through, really, truly understand it. So it's this isolating feeling. So if you are starting a business, having a co-founder, really ironing out the parameters of a real partnership, working through that, I highly recommend it. You need somebody who's right there at your side, working through all these problems together, because that feeling of isolation will creep in. It's only a matter of time. And I went through like 4 or 5 different versions of that feeling. Burnout was happening. We were plateauing again. And that kind of dovetails into my next slide here in a moment. But the burnout was really setting in going into the deal. And it just got even worse because I had 18 months of negotiations that really took me down a few pegs. Despite all the referrals we were getting, the sales pressure started creeping back in. I started realizing at that point that, okay, well, we were building this great system. Beam program was fun, was throwing money towards us. We had our own pipeline. Those referrals became our only pipeline. When those stopped or slowed down, it all of a sudden came crashing down. It made me realize, oh my God, we're not in charge of our own destiny. Like, don't get me wrong, I love US dollar. We have savings. We can weather the storm a little bit. But what happens if these guys go away? What happens if they just stop referring business to us? We need to figure this out. And we're so far into it now, salaries, group RSP, health benefits, new office that I spent money on, where the new Queen Street location, expenses are way up now. Like, it's a whole different ball game. So to be able to reinvent this is not an easy task. So the sales pressure really came back. In addition to that, I didn't know what to do next. Like, I didn't know how to get to that next level. If you own an agency, as Kevin knows specifically, you got to keep taking these jumps. You got to go from, your small business, Godfrey Realty clients, and you got to jump up, and then you got to jump up, and you got to jump up, and you got to keep going, because you need to keep your staff employed. Like, there's got to be growth there. You got to provide new opportunities and bring in new people and new expertise to keep your clients happy, to keep your staff happy. So I felt stuck. I'm like, I don't know how to keep growing this thing from Sault Ste. Marie. Like, I'm tapped out. My connections are all here. So growth and marquee clients was a huge contributing factor to why we made this deal happen. Speaking of marquee clients, very proud of some of the work that we're doing here. So it took some time to break into these groups, but Modco Media does all of the media for Grand Theft Auto since the franchise began, which is huge. Biggest video game ever, right? Did anybody watch the trailer? Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer that came out? Okay, good. You guys are two, I should say, have 475 million views in 24 hours. So the game's gonna be groundbreaking. We know it, right? It just took 12 years to make it. But this company does all the media for Take-Two Interactive, which does this video game, right? And Rockstar Games obviously produces it, but Take-Two Interactive is a company that does all the promotion, all the media with Modco. So Red Dead Redemption, a number of other video games. Modco had a very strong video game clientele that they were building upon, which allowed us to step into the financial sector, technology, other areas. Crypto.com, I'm sure you heard of them too. Another awesome marquee clients. Anybody here got crypto? Investing in crypto at all? A little bit? Okay, I've got like $200 in crypto. This isn't financial advice in any which way. Do what you guys want, but I don't have time to keep up with it. But I'm working on launching their credit card in the US. I'm on the team. So they came to us, again, huge endeavor. They're launching a credit card. They're going gangbusters in the US. They want it to be completely take over the airwaves. As such, our investment team, our media investment team, booked them a slot in the Super Bowl. So when you're watching the Super Bowl and you see crypto, just think that I was a part of that, like maybe a 16th a part of that. Yeah. So I was there. So anyway, really cool to see that we're finally starting to break into these marquee clients. That was one of the reasons for selling the business. It's starting to happen. And I almost need to emphasize the time that it's taken, because April 2024, the deal closed. In speaking with the CEO, we were like a 3-month transition. We are going to take over the world. 3 months. We're going to launch new brands. We're going to go after new clients. Ask Holly. It was a 3-month runway. We were supposed to make magic happen. We launched this last week. That's how long it took. So this is just a portion of the Modco Group website. So the vision for this business was to bring in, because Modco Media was a very strong media agency. They bought media advertising specifically for some of the largest brands in the world, based in New York City. right? Like Mad Men, you know Mad Men TV show? Their office on Madison Avenue. Like it's like kind of uncanny, right? The acquisition of Cavera was a part of a larger plan to bring in technology services, web development, SEO, data and analytics. And then a second acquisition was also going to happen to bring in a creative agency, which one happened to be the CEO's good longtime friend. So we finally got this thing launched. We're finally starting to go after some larger fish and compete in this large market with these 10, 20,000 employee type of agencies. And what's the teaching from this one? I don't know, be patient, I guess. God, it took so long to get to this point. But we're so proud that we're here. So when it comes to my personal growth and where I'm doing next, at first I thought I was going to be out of a job. I thought the acquisition was going to happen. They were going to take our clients, take our people. I was going to do a 2-year stint and then go find something else to do. Now it's looking like I'm going to have to stick around. I mean, they got me on here as a CTO, quite an upgrade from what I was doing before. So pretty proud to announce that. I think I'm going to have to kind of learn to fill those shoes as I go. But you guys can check out that website if you want. It's a very unique type of website, but I was told that this is what it takes to win over large businesses these days. So I told you I was burnt out. Anybody ever kind of go through burnout? Yeah. Don't be afraid. It's super common. And it sucks. It's terrible. Burnout just, it changes the way you think. So you're not thinking straight. You're doing weird things. You're just not perhaps who you used to be, right? You're thinking differently. You're acting differently. So burnout, obviously the best thing to do is to take a break and reinvent yourself a little bit. So, I'm 36 years old. I guess I'm a little bit early for my midlife crisis. I decided not to buy a sports car, which is kind of funny because I did the website on Vipers. So I could have bought a Viper. Instead, I bought a storage facility. So my partner and I, Mike Freiberger, we bought this storage facility out in Goulet River, and it was basically just a bunch of storage units in a field, and we started making improvements to it. So again, this whole motive behind this, which I think is just hilarious because it's such a deviation from computers and CTO and all this stuff, it was a really interesting project to take on, and I really love it. So we took on this project. We started building new buildings, really expanding on the business and turning it into an actual business, right? We needed to fix everything. It didn't have proper books. It didn't have any software whatsoever. So thankfully, I know a guy who could build websites. I built a website, built the software program, and it's running our business today. I really took, like I said, a bit of a left turn here because I thought I was going to be outside of a job. And this is basically where I'm at today. This whole presentation, like I said, was really wild to put together because I'd never really put all these events in succession before, really, all this different stuff. So it was really interesting for me to look back on and start thinking of all the different things that happened. And I got this question a lot, especially lately when people start realizing, whoa, you sold your business to a New York firm. And I go, yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be, but yeah, I did it. How'd you do it? And early on, I found myself going, I'm lucky. I work hard. It's bullshit though. It's almost damaging to say these things without additional context if you think about it, because am I lucky? Sure. There's a little bit of luck involved, but it's not the only thing. And then I work hard. Well, everybody works hard. A lot of people work hard. Some people don't end up, in my shoes or in my position, even though they worked harder than I did. So it's not just about hard work either. So I think my big key takeaway when people ask me about this, especially leading right up to this event, is, these things in isolation are potentially damaging. And I used to say them a lot. So a little bit more of a take on this is, I worked very hard. I made good decisions, and I created my own luck. So, that full circle coming back to all this, kind of to cap things off, if you will, it's a collection of all these different events throughout your life that kind of shape who you are. It's crazy to look back on. I think if you guys have any opportunity to really just sit there, take a few hours, think about what you've done, even itemize them, put them down on paper, I think you'll be impressed, even within yourselves. So when I started kind of thinking about this, especially in the last couple of weeks, it's this is right. This is what I align with now, because I did work extremely hard. I dealt with all the ebbs and flows. I had to battle against countless moments of adversity just to kind of push through to the next stage. But I have to also give credit to the good decisions. I mean, doing the pitch with Joe, I mean, that investment changed my whole life. Deciding to say yes and overcoming the whole Dragon's Den thing, which could have been a complete disaster and embarrass myself on live television, actually was pretty cool. So I created my own luck, right? And I think that that's kind of a really cool lesson that I can walk away from still smiling. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you so much. You ever hear the saying, fake it till you make it? Okay, well, a little bit of that. Okay, it's much more beyond that. Obviously, what we had to do was pretend to be, I'll even correlate this a little bit to some of that, like the earlier quote I put about like, act like you've been there before. I wouldn't say that I really thought about that quote within this scenario, but it tracks. And what I mean by that is I had to pretend that we had already been there. In a lot of cases in these meetings, I had to speak their language. I had to adapt extremely quickly and not be this small little Sault Ste. Marie business. I had to act older than I was. I had to act bigger than I was. And I had to shift that very quickly. So behind the scenes, shifting mindset was basically that. How do I learn how to speak bigger, seem bigger to our company, to our clients? It's like such a collection of things, Kevin. Like there's no one thing, right? When I started to realize, like there was a lot going on, and COVID, I don't think I ever fully recovered from that COVID situation. I'll be honest with you. It was like years and years of dealing with burnout at kind of like a super low functional level, and just kind of like dealing with it, not really knowing what it was, but like, why am I questioning my decisions more and more? What does that mean? It wasn't until later when I started actually getting into the whole acquisition thing as late as 2024, 3 years later, that I started realizing, oh, this is the symptoms of burnout. Like, no wonder why I'm feeling this way. There's something to this. The catalyst to get out of that, the acquisition, frankly, it was. I'll be honest with you. It was just like, I convinced myself, which again, this is give or take, whether or not it was actually the right decision, whether or not I should have walked away and actually just focused on Cavera and did my own thing, it's neither here nor there. My personal opinion is I think I did the right thing. I did. And I think that me moving forward from just dealing with all these problems on my own was the number one catalyst, which was the acquisition, to getting past that burnout. And I'm still kind of, like I said, I'm still working through that. It takes time. Yeah, okay, that's COVID. The decision to jump on all of those opportunities was a massive risk, and it was a risk I actually knew before the fact. So that I'm going to say was my biggest risk, because I kind of knew, and I still did it. We grew at that point during COVID, Nevin. We grew to about 13, 14 full-time equivalent people at Cavera from a team of 6. It's like they talk about don't grow too fast. We did that. We did it wrong. So like that right there was the biggest risk. We took it. We made our way through it somehow, barely. But I think that's our biggest risk for sure. Oh man, a culture question during COVID is awesome. Everybody just, the whole world is shifted upside down. Everybody's stuck at home. Like, good luck figuring out culture during that period, but you're so right. Like I said, when we started taking on all these clients during that era, the COVID era, and growing the team like gangbusters, nothing was being addressed properly. Nothing at all. So as much as I want to say that, what's the right way to say this? There was no culture. There couldn't be, because everybody was working from home. It was so difficult. We had video calls with one another, but at the same time, we took on this insurmountable amount of work. So nobody ever stopped to check on each other, plain and simple. So there was no culture. And it absolutely is probably the number one reason for the burnout across the board. And I'm the owner of the business. I'm by myself. I'm in isolation, and I got to solve it. So yeah, burnout for sure. So the good thing is the moments leading up to this acquisition, again, I never sold a business to a New York firm before. It's not like I had experience going into this. But my experience owning Cavera, being the person who brought in all the business and negotiated contracts all the way through and figuring everything out, really lended itself to this moment. It really did. The Dragon's Den situation, like I talked about, I was sitting across the table from people at these investment firms who deal in millions and millions of dollars all the time and going toe-to-toe with them. So that culmination of events leading up to this point, it was kind of like my prep, my practice. So in terms of like research and reading and everything you can do to prepare yourself, it's just like Dragon's Den. You got to know your numbers. Confidence is unmatched when it comes to negotiation. You absolutely need to know your stuff going in, because these people make a fool of you and then you're dead. Like, you'll never get that reputation back, right? So you absolutely need to know your information going into it. That's with everything. If you're going to sell services to people and you're going to help people, you need to know your services. If you're going to sell your business to a New York firm, you better know your business. You better know your financials inside and out and be able to speak to that. First of all, I have to say that this is an easy question to answer because I don't have children. Okay, so God bless you, all the people and the mothers and the dads that have children. Okay, I hope so. I hope to some degree that I can inspire my children, my future children, to follow in my footsteps, but also carve their own path. Okay, I think everybody, all kids, let's put it this way: in your youth, you have time to make mistakes. You have time to really make a mistake and start over. And you could probably do it a few times in your life. So yes, I hope they follow in my footsteps. I hope that they find a way to start a business, see if entrepreneurship is good for them, make a few mistakes, and then be able to go from there. And again, entrepreneurship's not for everybody. And if they don't want to do it, they realize it's not for them, it's way too isolating and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's completely fine, because there are a lot of really great jobs out there as well.